Another sexual abuse scandal surrounding the French clergy has erupted. Former Bishop of Bordeaux, Jean-Pierre Ricard, has confessed during the Bishops' Conference of France to assaulting a minor more than 3 decades ago. 35 years ago, when I was a parish priest, I behaved in a reprehensible way with a 14-year-old girl. The retired bishop, who was appointed a cardinal in 2016 by Pope Francis, is not alone. During the conference, a senior church body also revealed that 10 other former or serving French bishops have been accused of sexual assault, a revelation that has sparked outrage in France.
Et en fait, voilà, ce sont des hommes comme tout le monde, ce sont des êtres humains et qui peuvent avoir de leurs faiblesses.
Bon, maintenant, ce que je trouve regrettable, c'est qu'effectivement, dans la religion catholique, on ne laisse pas les prêtres, les archevêques et toutes les personnes qui officient se marier. Je crois que ce sont des hommes comme les autres.
The history of sexual abuse amongst French clergy is a long one. Last year, an investigation by the Independent Commission on Sexual Abuse in the Church revealed that at least 330,000 children in France were sexually abused over the past 70 years by some 3,000 pedophile clerics and lay members of the Church. Some of the perpetrators assaulted children on a vast scale over long periods of time. Their victims included minor boys and girls from different socioeconomic backgrounds, many of whom are still traumatized by the abuse. The report also concluded that the scale of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church in France was higher than other institutions, such as camps, state schools, or sports facilities. One of the victims who contributed to the investigations was François Deveau. He described being touched and kissed inappropriately by a priest during his stay at a Scouts camp when he was just 10. We were given one of those badges which we proudly took to our admiring mothers who sew on our jumpers. At the end of that meeting, when Father Bernard released us, he asked me, grinning, to stay for a moment. In my mind, he could not be malicious. In 2015, the young boy, now a man, came out to expose the abuse. Deveau and another victim ended up co-funding a victims association called La Parole Libérée, or the Liberated Word, that publicized the abuse and campaigned for holding those bishops to account. He helped bring the priest that molested him, Bernard Prenat, to trial, where he was convicted of assaulting dozens of Boy Scouts over a 2-decade period. In court, Prenat admitted to abusing more than 75 boys and was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 2020. The church also stripped him of his clerical status. Another victim that shared her testimonial with the investigation commission is 66-year-old Claudette Couturier. Couturier recalls being very little when she first encountered sexual abuse. She, along with her sister, was raped on different occasions by 3 priests during visits to their grandmother's house, where they spent most of their childhood. Their grandmother was an alcoholic, which made them easy prey for the priests, who took turns attacking them. She said that the priest stole 13 years of her life.
My earliest memory is of being very little and sitting on the priest's lap because he often came to my grandmother's for dinner.
If it hadn't been for the investigation, the 2 sisters would have continued to suffer in silence. The victims say that the sexual abuse and its emotional, social, and mental consequences have impacted their whole lives. Olivier Sauvinon, who was also interviewed by the investigative committee, said the experience of being abused lives within him. He was abused by the director of a Catholic vacation camp in the south of France when he was just 13. Sauvinon said that he never thought that priests would harm him.
Ce prêtre qui incarnait l'autorité comme quelqu'un de bon, de bienveillant, qui ne me ferait pas de mal. Mais c'est lorsque je me suis retrouvé sur ce lit, à moitié dénudé, lui en train de me toucher, que je réalisais qu'il y avait quelque chose qui n'était pas normal.
Most of the victims had the same perception about bishops, and that made them accessible and vulnerable. Sauvinon's offender was eventually accused of abusing him and other boys after the investigations concluded, and was sentenced to 2 years in prison in 2019. Sauvinon went on to establish a victims association in the same year, after the committee's report was published. The association called for making changes to the church's system to prevent such abuses in the future. These are just some of the testimonials from the report welcomed by the victims and activists. The Catholic Church of France expressed shame and pleaded forgiveness because it failed to report the abuses. The hierarchy repeatedly turned a blind eye to these violations and silenced the victims. In a statement, the president of the investigative committee, Jean-Marc Sauvé, said, "Until the early 2000s, the Catholic Church showed a profound and even cruel indifference towards the victims. In April, the church started to pay compensation to the victims of the abuse. The report also encouraged the church to consider ordaining married men as priests and loosening clerical celibacy." Despite the tsunami of victims identified by the investigation last year, the new cases exposed during the recent French Church conference indicate that the actual number of victims could bypass the figures revealed in the reports, and only a handful of the accused have faced criminal charges.